Hey, what's happening? It's SirJames coming at you guys with another video, and this is a part 2 or add-on to my previous video from last week where I talked about my experience using the PlayStation VR for the very first time, going over my thoughts of the general product, the demos in which I got to play. However, for this video, I just want to focus primarily on information. It's not going to be a lengthy video like last time, but some things I did tend to notice. For example, the build quality of the actual headset, how does it feel? In terms of the inner paddings, I basically have a spot on as to how exactly it feels in terms of what material and just general things like that. Not only that, when I was there, I was actually helping the guy set up, so I generally got to hook up the PlayStation VR for him, and of course to dismantle it almost like it was my own, and the process was actually very easy, simple, but there's a few minor details that I tend to notice. It may not be a big deal for most people, but it's just the small little details here and there that may catch some interest with the general public. So of course, I'm also going to be bringing some information that I used in my original video into this one, so that way this one's just more of an information or need to know type of basis. So the first thing I want to go ahead and talk about is the play area, as I mentioned in my original video. In terms of the play space, you do not need to have a large open space. Primarily what you need to have is a free open space on the left and right hand side, and of course in front of you to ensure that there's nothing in your way like a desk, a shelf, or anything like that, especially when you're using a game, or playing a game I should say, that's using the move controllers. So generally you just have a ball on hand, as long as you're not going to hit anything like so, then you're basically good to go. In terms of if you're going to be playing up against the ball, my recommendation there, even though it's not like, you know, a rule or anything like that, it's just my recommendation, is to give yourself a little bit of space between you and the back wall. So if you happen to be playing a particular game, or a horror game for this example, if your reaction was to jump back, you know, you'll have some space to kind of jump back into instead of hitting your head against the back of the wall, because that's the last thing that you want to do. It's just my advice for you. And of course, in front of you, you need to make sure you have some space to set up the PlayStation camera, generally 2 or 3 arms length away to set up the camera, and you are good to go. Now, hooking up the unit was actually very simple, and there's a few minor details that I tend to notice. After setting up the PlayStation 4, the first thing that I was setting up, of course, is the small little black box that takes care of a lot of the main power of the unit in general. And honestly, the little black box is not super large, and at the same time, it's also extremely light, very light, almost like there's nothing there at all. One thing that I did tend to notice is that on the right hand side, there's actually a couple connections that you had to plug in, and this little right hand side actually kind of lifts up like a door, which was kind of strange but yet cool at the same time. So initially you lift it up, and you have 2 connections. You have an HDMI, and then you have another style connection which will connect from the adapter that will go to the headset. Then once you have that plugged in, you basically pull it back down and you are good to go. But I thought that was pretty neat. On the back of the unit, you have your simple units, such as you have your power supply, you have the USB connection, which will go from the unit to the PlayStation 4 itself, and then you have 2 HDMI slots. Only one of the HDMI slots are actually important that you only need to use, but if you want to use the second one, completely optional. So in this case, one HDMI slot will go from the unit onto the PlayStation 4, and the optional one I mentioned, again, if you don't want to use the TV, you don't have to use the second HDMI cable. But if you have friends, family in the room, or if you're going to be playing a multiplayer game or using a capture card, then of course you will need to utilize the second HDMI ports. Not only thing, the other connection is that in regards to the headset, that process was actually done in 2 different parts. The first one is a much thick, lengthy cable which ends at an adapter, which will connect from the box all the way to the adapter, and then from there you have a cord that will go from the actual VR unit headset to the adapter, simple as that. But the way it works is that on the actual plugins, they actually have the PlayStation symbols on there, and then to ensure that you have everything lined up, all you have to do is match the symbols, and it's easy as that. Again, it's just little fine details like that, so you know that you're plugging in stuff to the right connections and you're not trying to force something that's not supposed to go. But that's about it. Now, one thing I was kind of looking out for when I was using the headset is try to get an idea that, let's say for example, in the near future, something happens to your headset, like maybe something happens to the cable, where, you know, to see if it's possible to replace just the cable, so that way you don't have to go out and spend another $400 for just the headset. Unfortunately, I didn't see any type of replacements. It is possible that for the adapter portion, you may be able to get a replacement for that, but in terms of the cable leading from the headset to the adapter, there's nothing there that could be replaced, so meaning that if something were to happen to that main portion from the headset, you would have to replace the entire unit instead of just a small little piece. Next thing to note is, as I mentioned, is that on the left hand side of the headset you do have a small little white adapter which will contain a few different functions. On the side is the option where you're able to connect a pair of headphones or a headset of your choosing, and in terms of the actual adapter itself, the functions include the power for the actual unit itself. You also have your mute button for anyone playing multiplayer games like Rigs, for example, or Eagle's Flight, and of course you also have your volume up and volume down. Easy as that. Now, in terms of the headset itself, one thing that I did notice in terms of the material, as I mentioned, the headset is extremely lightweight, to the point where you don't even have a center strap going down the center like the Hive or the Oculus Rift, which I thought was pretty neat. So, anyone who's kind of cautious about the hair doesn't have to worry about it. But then again, like I said, the unit is so light to the point where you really don't need a center strap on your head. The adjustments of the unit is actually quite simple. As I mentioned, there's about 2 different buttons that you can mess with. On the very back of the headset is a button that you press that will allow you to extend the headset out a little bit. So if you have a little bit of a fatter head, you can kind of get it around your head easily. And of course, you also have the adjustments where the goggles are at, which there is a bottom, there's a little button on the very bottom which will allow you to either push the goggles out or in, depending on your personal preference, or if you need to make some fine-tune adjustments. As for the material inside the headset, was a couple different things. In terms of the actual padding itself, around like the forehead and on the back, pretty much the best way I can compare the padding is to a Nerf ball. For anyone who's ever messed with a Nerf ball in the past, it's basically that exact type of material. It's super light, super comfortable, and honestly, I really have no complaints for that. And of course, also to the inner parts that they have, as well as that they have like these rubberized paddings as well, just little pieces of rubber that will go on the flaps on the side to help kind of take away any type of viewpoint that may be distracting either on the left and right hand side, to kind of conceal away from the light. And of course, you also have a little bit of rubber padding around the nose as well. But as I mentioned before, the headset is extremely comfortable to use, to the point where I don't know if this is going to represent the final product or if this is just the purpose of a demo unit. We may get something different on launch. But again, like I said, the headset unit is extremely light and really, really comfortable. That's either with or without glasses. Another thing to kind of mention is that something that I did get the chance to test out is based on the chair in which you will be in. Now, of course, most people at home have their own special chair, whether it be a high-end gaming chair, a super expensive office chair, or something cheap, kind of like what I have here. And I do notice that if you're playing on a certain type of chair, your experience will be a little bit different. For example, for the demo unit, we were on a stationary chair, but I did bring my own chair in to kind of see how it will kind of benefit the experience. And I feel like playing on a stationary chair that just doesn't move, just a simple fold-out chair, was a lot better than playing on an office chair. The reason for that is because, if you've been having to play a game that requires a lot of movement and stuff like that, there's a chance that you may throw yourself off-centered, and now you have to kind of adjust once again, and it's like, just minor things like that. I mean, it may not happen to a lot of people, but for the people who tend to going to be moving around a lot, you're going to kind of find yourself off-center to the point where you have to center yourself once again until you are in front of the camera. Having a stationary chair is already pinpointed directly in front of the camera, so all you have to do is basically just move your body around, so you could easily tell if you're not centered or not. But I feel like just playing on a stationary chair would be a lot better. As I mentioned in my previous video, the headphones also make a big difference in terms of your overall experience using the VR unit. If you happen to be playing with the VR unit without having a pair of headphones or a headset and you can still hear the outside world, you're not really going to be immersed into the overall experience of the actual device itself. However, if you have a pair of headphones or a headset and you crank up the volume where you can't hear the outside world and you're playing your VR title, then you're going to be immersed into the experience a lot better, especially the London Heist game. That's the one I actually went back to play multiple times because it was just a lot of fun, and that was the only demo that they had where you get to use the Move controllers. I just wanted to play it more and more. Then again, that one seemed to be a little bit glitchy with the demo unit to the point where we had to restart the actual PS4 a few times just to get everything working again, but that's really the only issue that we ran into. But again, it could be just based off the demo unit, and hopefully we don't experience that on its initial launch because some of the Move controllers wasn't pairing up correctly and stuff like that, or to the point where I was glitched over the roof. Now, another thing in which we got to test out while he was there, which he was pretty cool about it too, which was really nice. It was mentioned in the booklet that you were given is that you could also use it for a movie experience, but I was also kind of curious, can you use it just for your ordinary games? I mean, true, if you were to play a non-VR title, you are not going to have like a VR immersive experience, but I was just kind of curious it would work, because if it will work for movies, I don't see why not for games. And so we actually borrowed a game through GameStop. It was a Madden title, and honestly, basically, you were able to play your non-VR games with the unit. You just have a big giant screen in front of you, and honestly, it was really nice. It was better than playing in front of a TV in my opinion. So again, if you want to use the unit to play non-VR games, you can easily do that with no issues. And of course, you could also use the unit for watching a movie, which I got to test out. I brought over the Avengers, and honestly, it's like being in front of a giant movie screen with like no distractions around you. And again, it was really, really cool, especially if you happen to be in an area where you're sharing one TV and, you know, let's say someone wants to watch their own movie, like your girlfriend, wife, or something like that. You could just easily pop in PlayStation VR and do your thing or play your game that you want to do, and then she could go ahead and do her thing, and honestly, everyone would be quite happy. It's kind of like the Wii U controller, the Wii U gamepad, where you could just basically take what's on the screen, put it on the gamepad, and do your thing while someone else is utilizing the TV. So it's kind of like that technology, which I thought was pretty neat. Now, the one last piece of information that I want to let you guys know, because a lot of you guys were asking me this question, is what was the actual length of the cable? Now, just to confirm, I did ask the Sony rep at the time if the cable that was provided with the demo unit, is that going to represent what we're going to be getting in the final product. Unfortunately, he didn't know that information, but based on the measurements I did, it was about 65, 67 inches, give or take, because I didn't have a measuring tape there, but I did do some measurements at home based on where I was sitting and to notice if there's any type of slack or not. But again, like I said, it is a lengthy cable. If your entertainment is quite far back, I don't think it's going to be suited for that kind of situation, but if you're not too far from your entertainment section, then it should work out for you with no issues whatsoever. And that's pretty much it for this video. Like I said, I just want to kind of focus on the information side since I already talked about my experience with the games. Again, my experience with the games were really fun. I was immersed into the overall experience. I was playing that game Headmaster game, which is the soccer one where you basically headbutt the ball into the goal to score goals, and I definitely did a lot better than last time, because since I already had the general idea of what I'm supposed to do. But there's something that I'm going to be doing for the game, because I did look up some videos, and apparently there was a group of people who were doing a challenge for Headmaster, and they were actually standing up for this particular demo, but they had a railing in which they were holding onto, so to know that that's basically going to be the front of the screen. So I may just kind of build something out of PVC pipe to kind of utilize that or something, but that's pretty much the only thing that I was able to take notice of. Once again, but that was the only thing I was able to take notice of when I was checking out videos and of course playing it for myself. But that's pretty much it for this video. Like I said, I just want to kind of focus on information, let you guys know some of the additional details that I did tend to notice, the build quality of the headset, kind of giving you an idea what the material inside of it would be like, play space, and so forth. But if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you have not gotten the chance to try out PlayStation VR, I'll have a link in the description down below which will lead you to one of Sony's websites. All you have to do is to type in your area code and to give it the website a general length in terms of how far you're willing to travel to, and hopefully there will be an area within you, because most of the areas that are going to be utilizing this will be either a GameStop or Best Buy. But once again, I am SirJames from Gamerfuzion.com, where we empower your gaming.